Hey everyone, it's Foxx from modelmakingguru.com here, and welcome back to part 9 of our build of the Bandai Perfect Grade 160 scale Zaku 2 for Ammo by MiG. Yes, more carrying on. Right, I've stopped watching West Wing now. I was on a binge. So back to work. So where are we up to? Well, we've done all the inner frame parts now. I have gone ahead and I've not done all of it, but I've done some detail painting and just kept it really simple. So we've got some sort of bronze parts here you can see on the back of the leg. We've got some brown parts. I did lots of little silver bits here and there on some sort of pistony things and bolt heads. And you can see here, hopefully on camera it'll shine a different colour. What else did I do? I did some little bronzy bits on here. Some brown. Don't know why I did those brown, I just fancied doing them brown. What else did I do? I did on the arm, I kept it simple. These look like brake calipers, so I just painted them separately. Like brake calipers, maybe they are like brake calipers, who can say? They're just bronze. What else did I do on the arm? Not much else on the arm, I don't think. Oh, I did paint, if I can get it open. Inside there is a rust colour, but you probably can't see that on the little springy things. I did bits on the waist, just little bronze accents, or gold accents, just here and there. Painted this bit at the back, kind of bronzy colour, some black for the strips over the front, and I painted this bit. This looks like a carburettor or an air grab on an old muscle car. Painted that the base green colour, the armour base green colour, just because it just took my fancy. Painted these bits bronze. And I did lots of bits around the rest of the inner frame. What colours did I use? I used 3 basically. Old brass, AMIG 190, do it on camera there. Silver, AMIG 195. And Shadow Rust AMIG 043, and these were just brush painted on, so I'll quickly do a bit now just to show you. It's dead simple. Oh, I also did the pistons on the leg here, silver for that part, and the bronzy gold colour there. Old bronze, old brass, old bronze, old brass, there you go. Did fine with the old brass. You kind of have to do a couple of coats. These are just brush painted on, but you kind of have to do it in a couple of layers because it's quite a clear colour. It's quite a translucent colour, so it takes a couple of layers to build up, and you do have to stir it, and I'll show you that in a bit. So let's crack on with a bit just to show you. So we have the top of the head. Let me get the camera in a good position and we'll film this, so back in a moment. Okay, so we've got the top of the head here, and I should be wearing gloves really because this is the clear canopy part, but never mind. And we're just going to do a couple little details on these bits on the top. Now you're never really going to see these, hey, but what can you do unless I open the bonds. So I've got a little bit of the not the camera, AMIG 195 silver on my surface of paintage. Now I'm going to be using, for this I'm using a layer brush. I'm not using my finest artificer brush. You can use any brush, it doesn't have to be a Citadel brush. I'm not using the smallest possible brush, and the trick is when you're painting small details, don't always use the smallest possible brush. Why? Because the smallest possible brush can sometimes give you lots of brush marks, whereas a slightly bigger brush can smooth it out a bit, especially with metallic colours. So this is dead simple. Basically, just go in and brush over the parts you want. I've not thinned it at all, and I'm not too worried if it's not nice and neat and tidy, because you can see here how I've got some darker, just by virtue of when I did the dry brush, I've got some darker colour inside the grooves, because I'm going to be doing weathering to this to get those dark panel lines accented. Now it doesn't really show up on camera, it doesn't really show up in real life, because the base colour is quite light anyway. Let's get some more paint. Where's my paint? There it is. So it's best to do this in a couple of coats. Just take your time, let the brush flatten so it's as wide as the thing you're painting. With the raised detail like this, don't dab away. A handy trick is just to push gently enough until the brush flattens to be as wide as the thing you're painting, and that's how you can get, I was looking at the camera then some brush went everywhere, that's how you can get a reasonably smooth and flat, I've forgotten which bit I'm painting now, surface. So I'm just colouring it for now, and that's all I really want to do. Now again, it probably doesn't show up on camera at all because it won't show the difference between the steel dry brushing, the original gunmetal and this silver, but I can see a bit of a difference. And that's all I really want to do on this bit. Okay, so we're going to use the old brass for those end pieces here. Now, these metallic colours, the silver and things, you just give them a good shake. What I found with things like gold and old brass and some of the other sort of not just basic silver colours is the pigment can settle at the bottom. So even if you shake it vigorously, as I have just done, it doesn't always mix. So that's the kind of colour you should be getting. But if I switch some out, okay, it's not bad, but it's a little bit watery. And all it means is, I've got mess all over the top, all it means is basically the pigment settled to the bottom. And there is a little metal ball bearing in there to mix it all together, but it's not always super effective in these particular colours. So all you need to do is pop the lid out. What I found best is take something to stir it with, something metal, not something wood or anything like that. I use my clay sculpting tools, I have loads of these, and the greatest stirrers. So I'm just going to bop it in, stick that end in, give it a good stir, but I'm going to make sure I really rummage around the bottom as well for the pigment that's down there. I can feel the little metal ball bearing. Going to give it a good swizzle, just to munge everything up, because I want to get all the pigment from the bottle. And I'm guessing it must just be perhaps that the pigment in things like gold and the bronzes and brasses is perhaps a little bit heavier, so it sinks to the bottom a bit easier. So let's just get as much off as we can there, because I don't want to waste any. You don't want to waste paint. So pop the little stopper back in with some tissue stuck in there. Brilliant. Idiot. Hang on. There we go. Get that lid back on. Get that lid back on. Just make sure it's on properly. Hang on. So I have found this, as I say, with like the darker metallic colours. The silver seems to be alright. I'm going to give it a good shake, just to mix it even more. Yeah. And there we are. Good to go. Okay, so we've got our old brass. Going to get it on the brush, using the same brush as last time. So a bigger brush than you think you need. Not too much paint on the brush. And again, I'm not 100% worried if I go over some edges somewhere. And we're just going to go on and paint this. Now it may look a little pale at first. Like I said, this is a kind of translucent colour. But you're going to do it in a couple of layers. And as before, we're just going to use the brush and flatten it down to an edge to try and get that nice straight edge. We're going to use the width of the brush instead of dabbing and poking. Actually get some paint on the brush. Instead of dabbing and poking everywhere, we're actually just going to use the weight of the brush itself. So get close to the edge and then just push a little bit and the brush will splay out a tiny amount and hit the edge you want. That's going to do for that one. Let's do this front one. And I have to tell you, I don't know why, but I have to tell you, but painting with metallic colours is for some reason much more satisfying than painting with any other colours. I think it's because they are quite forgiving. So I'm just going to squash the brush to the edge. I'm not going to dab away and put the brush to the edge. Now it does mean that your brush will splay out a little bit over a few minutes, so you might just have to go and reload it with more paint and twist it when you get the paint on the brush, just to flatten the edge out. And this is why it's better with a slightly larger brush than you think you'll need for these kind of colours. Hope this is all on camera. Shaky hand, shaky other hand. Ooh. Okay, so that's that done. Now that's quite nice and bright, but as I say, they are sort of translucent colours, so what I might do is let these dry for about 20 minutes. Just enough so that I can go back over it again with the same colour, just to darken it so that it matches more like that kind of colour. You can see the difference there. I could just leave it like that if I want to leave it brighter. If I want to darken it a little bit, just go over with a second coat. Okay, right, now for the next step. I've decided what I'm going to do. We are going to do what's called a magic wash. Now it's probably got different names, and I'd never actually come across this technique till I watched my very good friend Ant from Bashing Kits, who's on YouTube, Bashing Kits, do this. And it's very simple, and it's absolutely perfect for gunpla. Now, as we know, as I've said before, the problem with gunpla is the plastic is very susceptible to being destroyed by thinners. So things like thinned enamel paints, thinned oil paints, anything with thinners is a real problem. You can do a wash and it'll be absolutely fine, but if it gets into a little gap or crack and seeps into an area where perhaps some paint has been scraped off or you haven't had any primer, it can damage the plastic. However, this technique is brilliant because it solves this problem. This is my little pot of magic wash. You can tell because it says magic wash. I have to label these things dead carefully because I'm an idiot and I probably forget what it was if we try and drink it or something. Dead simple. All it is your paint of your choice and a gloss varnish, a self-leveling gloss varnish. Now there are different ones out there. As you know, I prefer my Pledge Floor Care finish 2 times more shine. 2 times more shine. I have to do that. It's in my contract, you know it. And it's dead easy. All I've done is I've filled this little pot with the Pledge and I have added some drops of Shadow Rust AMIG 043 and about 10, I can't remember the exact number, it's between 10 and 15 drops of Satin Black AMIG 032. This is a satin colour, but it doesn't matter because this is a gloss varnish. There's a reason this is kind of cool, because normally what I'd have to do is I'd have to gloss varnish. I'd have to gloss varnish. Shall I start that again? Teeth in. I'd have to gloss varnish everything and then start the weathering. By doing this method, I'm using my gloss varnish, but I'm also doing a bit of a pin wash at the same time. So I'm not having to do 2 separate steps. Now, it's not going to be the be-all and end-all wash. It's only going to give some shading. I've not just used neat black. I wanted it sort of a, you won't really see because I've stirred it so there's bubbles, but it's kind of a grubby, grimy colour. So it's not neat black. That's why I put the brown in there, just to dull it a little bit. You could just use black paint. It depends what effect you want. But this will effectively do the gloss varnish and a bit of a pin wash at the same time. Now, there will be more weathering after this, but this is just so I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and it means I can do a wash that I wouldn't normally be able to do because unless I could thin a paint with water, I can't use it. Now, I did try on some parts a while ago using thinned water with the ammo paints, and they work, you know, they're absolutely fine. You can thin them with water, but I found it was the paint wasn't quite, how to explain it, it didn't really do what I wanted it to do. It looked good, but it left lots of tide marks and water marks because you're thinning it with water, not with alcohol or spirits or thinner. So you can thin things with water, but you get a different effect doing a wash with water than you do with, say, alcohol or spirits or anything else that you might thin a paint with. And now I did do one piece earlier as a test. I don't know if this will come out. This is the side of the waist. This hasn't been magic washed, and as you can see, it looks really good. You've seen these before, but it has a certain look to it. However, if I turn this over, this side has been magic washed. Now, I don't know if it'll come out on camera, but it's just got a bit more definition. It's shiny because it's got the gloss coat, so the gloss coat is done, but it's just got a bit more definition. You can see in these little areas here, in these little recesses, there's some black around the edge and there's black around the edges. And again, if I'd done this with just thinners or anything else, I'd be putting the plastic at risk. If I'd done it with just water, which you can do, it wouldn't have given you such nice defined edges. You would have had it would have faded more and been more watermarky. So in this situation, and then I still have to gloss varnish it beforehand, so I'm doing 2 things at once. So that's that. So that's the effect you're going to go. It's very subtle. It's not anything major. And I said, it's not anything going to be blatantly obvious, and there will be more weathering to come. So let's give this a go. So I'm going to take my magical wash of washing magics, give it a bit of a stirrage. Now, when you leave the words, yeah, I'm talking rubbish again. When you leave this stuff to sit for a while, the paint does settle out because it's denser than the gloss varnish. So just make sure you give it a jolly good old stir. Try not to shake whatever you've got it in because it does go a bit foamy. And it's not a major problem, it's just a bit of a pain. So I'm taking myself a nice wide flat brush. And I do have to thank Ant for putting this in his latest video when he did a Poe Dameron's X-Wing. I'd seen him do it before, but I'd never really registered it. But watching him do it, I thought, I can do that on the Zaku, yes! So thank you, Ant. I've been dawdling on this for ages and figure out how to do this weathering. So yeah, anyway, let me shut up. Let's get on with it. So you can be quite generous. This stuff does self-level really well. And what I'm going to do is I'm just doing it. There you go. There's no real carefully at all. Now a lot of this won't be visible when it's all built, but I'm just going over reasonably slowly. Might get some bubbles, but that's not a problem, because if I get a bubble, I can just blow on it to get rid of it. And this is it. This is all I need to do. I can be quite generous. I don't need to worry too much. It's no different to applying a gloss varnish as I normally would. No different at all. I've just put some paint in it to colour it. And that's a technique. This is a similar technique that you might use if you wanted to, for example, if you had a cockpit on a model. Sorry for knocking the camera. You might want to tint that cockpit. Or if you've got some glass in there, you know, in a model that you want to have a certain tint to it, you might add some paint to your gloss varnish, in this case Pledge, to have that effect. So I'm just going to focus that properly for you. Let me just focus it for you. Is that in focus? Here we go. So there you can see now, I've not been gentle. I've put quite a lot on. If you think you've put too much on and you think it's going to start running, what you can do is just, I'm doing it off camera, but get most of the wash off your brush so it's a bit dry, and you can actually just wick some of the excess away with the brush. If you think you've gone a bit too heavy and it's not going to level out very well, just go back and just, if it's pooling, just wick some out. Or you can use a piece of kitchen roll or tissue just scrunched up into a point, just to suck some out. So this now means I've got a nice wash in all these recesses and it's gloss varnished. So I can now safely go ahead and do lots more weathering. I'm going to put that to one side. Now bear in mind, of course, when you do this, like any kind of wash, gravity has its effect. Gravity will pull the wash down, so obviously, depending on what you're doing, do keep an eye on it. For example, if you're doing a plain fuselage, if you slap this all over, it may pool at the bottom into a dark spot, so just keep an eye on it and bear in mind where gravity is going to go. Let's do this one. Let's do this. So now we go over like this, you see, ready? I'll just change the focus because it won't be in focus. Yeah, I'll just move it, there, it's easier. Slap it on. Now I did have to experiment a bit to get the right shade, because at first I didn't put enough of the black in, and it was alright, but it wasn't quite dark enough, so I'm just going to go over. You're not going to see this part, so I'm not too fussed about this bit. I'm just really getting in here. Now I'm not going to go over the camera, the mono eye, because that needs to be glossed, but needs to be glossed without being dirty. Just try and get a bit more in there into those recesses. I can always come back with a different pin wash later. Go over that. Hopefully this is all in focus. Go over there like that. And you'll find when you do it, it will fade a bit as it dries. It'll dry lighter. It won't be as dark. But because I've added some of the rust brown, or whatever the brown colour was, shadow rust even, it won't be stark as if I'd just done it in black. Again, you can do whatever colour you want. I'm probably going to end up with a series of different magic washes in various colours, in different pots for different purposes, so I can call on them whenever I need to. And I'm really grateful for Ant for showing that, because it's such an obvious thing to me, looking at it now. It's such an obvious technique that I'd never thought of. And that's the way it is sometimes. Sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees. You'll try and figure something out, a method or a technique, or you want to get a certain effect and you won't be sure how to achieve it. And then either you'll come across an idea or you'll have the idea and you'll be like, wow, how did I not think of that? That's so obvious. Duh. And that's the way it is sometimes. Sometimes you can easily come up with a really complicated method of doing something, but you know, sometimes there's a much simpler way. And bearing in mind I've been doing Gunpla now for what, 3 years or something, and I'd never thought of how to do this. So there you can see on this part here, hopefully, it's now got the gloss varnish on there. It's gone into these little recesses here, so it's nice and dark. Now there is a little bit of excess pooling down at the bottom, so I'll just very quickly touch the brush to it. I've just dried the brush off a little bit. It will self-level. Let's get a piece of tissue. It will self-level, but obviously if you put tons on there, then it's going to leave a little sort of bulb, like you do with when you dip the canopy. Same principle, just wick a little bit off. There you go. And what I would say is you can still play with it a little bit for sort of 5 minutes or so. But after about 5 minutes, with this gloss especially, but probably with the varnishes as well, your mileage may vary. After about 5 minutes, if you try and brush any more, you'll just ruck it up and you'll create brush marks because it'll start to cure and you'll get surface tension. So I wouldn't fiddle with it more than, you know, for a minute or two. If you want to add more, then let this dry, give it an hour. This stuff will be touch dry in an hour, but I would leave it 24 hours or overnight just to fully cure before you go ahead and do anything else. If you're going to go into more weathering after this with, say, enamels or oils or anything else where you're going to be using thinners, just leave it 24 hours, 48 hours if you can, just to be absolutely sure. Again, it depends on your particular gloss varnish. Your mileage may vary. Okay, right, next stage. The magic wash, as Ant likes to call it, has been done. And as you can see, it's quite subtle. But now I've got a nice gloss varnish coat on these pieces. The next stage is another wash. Now, what I've done now is, this is basically a gloss varnish and a gloss coat with the magic wash in it. Next, I want to add some more darkening. And for this, what I've done is I've mixed in some of the satin black, a tiny amount, and some of the shadow rust. And there was another colour which I've forgotten what it was. It was another one of the brownie rust colours. I do apologise, I can't remember. But for sure I used shadow rust, AMIG 043. And I used satin black, AMIG 032. Now, this is just in water. Now, I said earlier on about using water and how it gives a different finish. I can't use thinners because that might explode my plastic into billions of tiny pieces and I want to do a wash. So I'm going to do this with water. Now, it will give you a matte finish. What I'm hoping is that although the black is a satin colour, I've only used a tiny amount, and I'm hoping the matte of the brown overpowers it. Now you can see here, hopefully, I've done the engines at the back and this sidewall with what I'm about to do with this wash. And as an example, here's the other sidewall, clean, respectable, and here's the one I've actually washed, a bit darker. It's got a bit more definition around the raised details. I've done it on the engines and the back as well, just to fill in the panel lines and the recesses. I've not done the bells, and I've done it up here, and I put quite a thick amount on here just to darken this part. So you can see it's changed the tone altogether now to this colour. So this is the plan, and it's dead easy. Again, this is just thin with water, and all we're going to do is dead simple. Get the brush, get some of the wash, and slap it on. Now, I'm not going to do it carefully. Remember, this is going to be a dirty, grubby machine, so I'm not too... Let's move this out of the way so it's not somewhere dangerous. Where can I put it? There you go. It's not going to be... Oh, nearly spilled it. Nearly did Tony. I'm not worried about it covering up all my hard work with the dry brushing or anything like that, because this needs to be dirty. And what I'm hoping is that this will matte the surface a little bit, because what we can do later on is come back with some more dry brushing just to bring back some edges, some metallic edges. What I want this to do is tint the parts so they look dirty. Now, the thickness for this is... It's hard to explain, really. How thick is it? Just a bit thicker than water, maybe. And this is what you would traditionally do with a thinner. You'd make a wash with thinner, but I don't want to do that. And it looks pretty dark now, but it will go lighter as it dries. And this is just to tint everything and get in those recesses, because it's a gumpler. There's very strict limits on what I can actually do without damaging the plastic. So there is the one downside of gumpler, and it's also one downside of having the camera so close that I can't actually get the brush in there properly. But you can see that it's filling these holes nicely. Now, I say looks extreme now, but it will tone down, it will stop being shiny, and it will fade a little bit. So I'm just slapping it on, not being careful. You could just use black, and it looks like black, but it's not. The shadow rust gives it that kind of, with the satin black, whatever the other colour was, and I can't remember. It just gives it that slightly oily look, which is what I'm looking for, really. You could just use black, but yeah, I don't. Black's a bit too stark. I wanted to soften it a bit with the other brown colours. I can't remember what the hell did the colour. I've put all my, so made the little mix and I put loads of paints away just because I was running out of space, and I put it away and I can't remember what it was now. Fail. And I'm knocking the camera. So we're just going to get that all over. Because it's water and the paint is acrylic, of course it's not going to do any damage. It's not going to harm my poly caps or anything like that. Don't really need to paint this bit because you're not going to see that bit. But I'm not being careful, I'm not being thoughtful, I'm just slapping it on. And once this is on, we can go back and do, if we need to, we can go back and do some dry brushing just to bring back the edges and the highlights if it gets a bit muddy looking and a bit indistinct. So it's just about having fun. You don't have to think too much. The only thinking you really need to do is, because it's a Gunpla, you have to be super careful. So yeah, and that is the one downside of Gunpla. You can't just slap anything on there. This is a normal model kit. I'd be doing all kinds of thinned enamel washes and stuff, because some of the colours in the MIG range are brilliant. Like the Streaking Grime Thinned is a brilliant sort of dirty, streaky filth colour for, you know, mechanical things. So, well, I hope all this was on camera. I can't actually see what I'm doing, and I've got to get it in a place where I can do it. So that's going to do for that. Going to leave that to dry. So that's done. You can see now it's a completely different colour. I say it will fade slightly. You'll get some patchiness here, and I've got really shaky hands at the moment. You get some patchiness here and there, but that's fine. This is supposed to look like dirt and grime and oil and all kinds of stuff. And like I say, we can go back and dry brush to pick out the edges. So I'm going to put that to one side. I'll finish off the rest of the cockpit. I've done everything else apart from the feet. See if I can find you something that's dried. There you go. Here's the top of the bonce. Focus on that for you. Here's the top of the bonce, and you can see it has given it a nice matte. It still looks metallic, but it's a matte finish. You can see here these parts which were shiny before are no longer quite so shiny. Now that's not the end of the world. This is perfect. This is exactly what I'm looking for. It's just a darkening and a shading. If I wanted to bring back the shine on any of these parts, I could just very carefully brush over some of my gloss varnish, and that will bring back a bit of reflectivity and shine to it. So it's not the end of the world. This is just like an overall wash coat. So I'm going to leave those to dry. When we come back, we will do, not sure, we might do a little bit with some oil and fuel stains. It's an enamel, but we might do that just for some little spots and patches to see what happens. So let me go and let all these dry, and I'll get the feet done, everything else done, and then we'll do those when we come back. So back in a moment. And we're back. Right, that wash has now had time to dry, most of all, pretty much, apart from a few corners here and there. And as you can see, this thing is now looking much darker. Yeah, look at this. I like the little, see, I like the way the water pools and evaporates. Gives it a certain, not brushiness, but a certain sort of patchy quality here and there, which is what I said in the earlier clip. So you get a few splotchy marks and things, which is fine, because we're going to do more weathering on top. But it just gives it that dirty, used machinery look, which I'm really, really liking on here. It came out really well. Sometimes water washes don't work, but I'm really pleased with this. It came out really nicely. It came out beautifully, absolutely gorgeously on these parts. I'm so pleased with that. I mean, I know you're seeing it on screen here, but to see it in real life, it just looks dusty and dirty, and I'm liking that. Goes in all the little lines. So it came out really well. Like on here, I'm really pleased with it. Came out beautifully. And it's just simple paint and water. Slap it on, leave it to do its thing. Again, with any wash, keep in mind gravity. I had these stood up like that, so obviously things pull towards the bottom. On arms, it's a bit more difficult because the arms aren't in a set position, but legs are always like that, so it kind of made sense. So it pulls around the bottom of things and the bottom of that little piston there, which is really nice. One other thing I did do as well, up here where the paint was scratching off, and I'd re-dry brushed it, the paint was still scratching off but not as much. So what I've actually done, what I did was go in with the modelling knife and scrape the paint back so it looks like actual paint chipping, like as if it's been perhaps painted the idea I'm trying to simulate is it's been painted this dark grey colour and that's scraped away to reveal the metal underneath. So I tactically scraped it away because there's no way it was going to keep the paint on. It would just look terrible. And then I sanded the bare plastic to make it less shiny. And that now hopefully looks a bit more like perhaps these strips have been painted black and then that's chipped off with use to reveal the metal underneath. Because there's no way I can fix that. There's absolutely no way. The joint is so tight, I can't get the leg apart again, so there's nothing I can do. So, happy accidents, I think it looks quite good. So I'm really pleased with this. So what's next? Well, the next step really is to do a little bit. I'm happy with this as it is. I don't think I'm going to do any dry brushing. I don't think it needs it. The next step is to get a little engine oil and sort of leaky fluidy stuff on here. Then we'll give it a blast with some either streaking grime or engine grime with the airbrush, and then we'll do some dust and powders because this is going to pick up dirt and dust the same as the outside armour, and then we'll be done with the inner frame. So I'm going to quit talking, so let me get the engine oil and grease and stain and thing ready and we'll do that. So back in a second. Okay, so for this very quick step we're going to be using fresh engine oil, a MiG 1408. Now this is an enamel, so this is where I have to be super careful with what I do. So we're just going to get something to put this on because I will spill it. You know I will spill it. And as the name suggests, it's fresh engine oil. It looks kind of oily. So I'm not thinning it. I'm just taking a fine brush. This is a Citadel glaze brush, but any small, reasonably fine brush will do. And all I'm going to do is quite simply suggest bits of drippage and leakage. So where can we go? Well, let's put some around here. Now it's just going to sit in corners. I've got to be very careful because I really can't afford to get this into anywhere where there's a joint or two parts of plastic meeting under stress. So I've got to be super careful doing this. So I'm just touching it to these edges. And I don't mind if I go up a little bit. I'm going to blob it around a little bit and it won't really even be visible, but I know it's there. And I just want to suggest oil leakage, things where oil is running down and out, and it will stay shiny. That's one advantage. So for example, I might put some around this little bit here. It's just like a brown oily stain. Put some there as if it's run down there. And this will probably take me about half an hour to 45 minutes to do because I've got to go around carefully and select where it wants to be. The irony is that none of this will be visible ever because it's all going to be in the inner frame. But it might be. When I've done this, obviously I'm going to be selling it most likely, and I'm going to be doing it so that the new owner, whoever decides to buy it, may decide they want to have the inner frame exposed in places. So I'm going to not make any assumptions. Now, like I said, I'm being super careful not to let this run into any crooks and nannies anywhere. If this was a wash, I'd just be making the whole thing fall apart now. So I'm using it neat from the jar, so it doesn't run really anywhere. And I'm just picking my spots, like around this little panel line here perhaps. And hopefully what it'll do, because obviously I've just put an acrylic paint on there, it'll hopefully blend in a little bit to the acrylic. Now you should never normally mix enamels and acrylics, obviously, unless the acrylic is fully cured. Then you can paint the enamels over the top. But even if this isn't fully cured, it should hopefully, even if it does mix a little bit and react, that's fine. It'll just make it look a bit scruffy. Normally you wouldn't. Hope this is all on camera. Normally you wouldn't ever mix these, but we'll see. So let's just do, and it's really just staining. Think of it like painting on paint chips. It's like painting paint chips but in oil. So go and look at a mechanical thing. Where does oil gather? It gathers in things like here, in little recesses, and then runs down. It follows gravity. So again, I can make it gather in there and then run down here. So we can have it running down edges. And again, it's not going to be super visible, but it will be a little shiny bit of relief on this, what is probably now really a satiny type surface. So I'm just going to go around the whole model, all the inner frame, find areas where I think I want oil running and dribbling. And it's just like painting on paint chips. It's like a bit of a wash and a bit of a paint chip scenario. And that's all I'm going to do. So I'll get this done. When we come back, we'll do a little bit of airbrushing with the, I think, streaking grime we might use, but we'll see. And then a few last touches and then we're done. So I'll go and crack on with this. Back in a moment. Right, so the enamel's had time to dry. The oil, you can see there, it's little shiny patches on there. I kind of focused around places where I thought oil would collect, you know, around here and little sticky out bits, and just here and there. I've been over all the parts apart from the hands. As is my prerogative, I decided to completely change my mind. I was going to spray on or airbrush on some streaking grime just to give some dusty effects, but I've decided not to, because that's what I'm like. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to quickly dry brush just some very faint highlights with some steel, MiG 191, just here and there to give some edge definition, because it's looking a little uniform. And then I think I'm happy with it. What I might do then is just do a little bit of powders, just a tiny amount, just to dust it a little bit, because the thing I realised was that the bits of inner frame that you're going to see when the armour's on are the bits that are going to get covered in dirt and dust. The rest of it, you won't see it anyway, but it probably wouldn't get that dirty and dusty because it's covered in the armour. So what I'm going to do is just do some bits here and there, just very lightly, just to suggest dust and dirt before the armour goes on. And then that'll be it. And the armour will be complete. I mean, the inner frame will be complete. And what I'm doing here is just very lightly going over some edges. Not as in depth as I was when I did the frame first time around. My goal here is not to cover up all the hard work I've done, but just to bring back a little bit of definition to some of the edges. So just a light dry brush, just here and there, because I want some edges to poke out a little bit. And as well, if I've got any bits where it's an obvious splot of that thin water wash that I did, then I might want to just fade that a little bit, just to make, like there, you can see there, like a splotty bit. I might just want to fade that a bit, just to blend it, fade it away, so it's not quite so obvious it's got brush marks on it. And it'll just bring out a little definition. So I'm just going to do this on legs and arms and all the inner frame parts. So there we go. It all came out quite nicely. I was quite happy with how I did it on the how it came out on these back parts here around the engines. I put it on these little metallic parts, on these bolts, and around the tops of these things. I assume are engine type things. So I'm just carefully going around and doing this. So I'm not as intensively talking rubbish. Not as intensively as I've done before. Just a subtle. Just edge definition, really. So that's what I'm doing now. So I'll go away and do the rest. Just a quick look in. I'll go away and do the rest, and then when we come back we'll do a little bit of powder pigment work, and then we'll call this episode quits, and we'll call the inner frame done and done. So see, that's as much as I want to do. Just get my paintbrush caught in the camera lead. Just on edges here, just blending. Just gives it a bit more cohesive look. Just a bit of edge sticking out. So anyway, let me go and finish all the inner frame parts, and then we'll do some powders. So back in a moment. Okay, now on to the final step. Now I have to talk a bit quietly because it's after midnight. My neighbours are asleep now. So final step, and this is a really subtle step that you won't even probably see on camera. We're just going to use some pigment. We're going to use some dark earth, a MiG 3007, smashing 007. All I'm going to do is, when I do the final weathering, once the armour and stuff is on, I'll be doing a lot more of this to make to give the effect of dirt and dust and things on the outer armour. But for this bit, I don't really want to give the effect of lots of earth and dirt. I just want to change the colour a bit. So what I'm doing is using a big fluffy brush, and I'm just rubbing it in. Let's just get some on the brush from the pot, might be a bit easier. Now this is super messy, which is why I've got the paper down. So I don't want too much on the brush. I'm going to knock some off, because like I say, I'm not trying to reproduce what looks at first like I am. I'm not trying to reproduce earth and dirt as if it's covered in earth and dirt. What I want to do is just colour it a bit. You see there, I've actually rubbed it into the pile there by accident, but that's fine, because it's all part of the experience, it's all part of the effect. Oh, apologies, I keep knocking the camera. So we're just going to slap this all over, and only a little way up. Remember, these things are what, 17, 18 metres tall. You're not going to get too much dirt and earth all the way up. So I'm going to concentrate around the bottom here. And we're just going to work it in. And apologies, it's all off camera. I'm just realising that. I've got the camera in just the wrong place. Now further up I go, I'm going to do a sort of a light brush. Just a little bit. Trying to avoid touching it too much. See, when I do the weathering on the outside, I normally go for the effect of loose dirt. This is, I'm kind of rubbing it in. So let's just find somewhere to hold it by. This is just really a more general ground in dust and dirt rather than loose dirt, loose earth. So that's going to do, I think. So I'm smushing it into the brush so it's more compact. What we'll do, we'll get another brush. Oh, get this brush. I don't know what this brush is, but we'll get this one. I just want to take some of the excess off, so we'll just rub that away. Just a little bit. I don't want too much. It's a bit like doing a dry brush instead of painting, really. I'm just doing a light coverage of this stuff rather than completely covering it in lots of dry, loose earth. You'll see when I've finished and put the armour on, I'll just cover this thing in earth completely to make it look more earthy. But that's all I'm looking for right now, is just a tint, which probably doesn't even come out on camera, to be honest. It might do a bit, it does on that, it's a bit extreme on there. But what I'm trying to do is just rub the really smushed in pigment into the surface. And there we are. And that, basically, is all I want to do. I've done the other leg, I've done a little bit on the waist part, and that's as much as I want to do. I also put some, I'll show you, I also put some on the floor of the cockpit, because hey, people walk around in the cockpit, so I kind of decided that there would be some dust and dirt. Now it may look a bit stark on camera, don't know how it comes out. I'm looking at the screen here and it looks like the floor is yellow, but it's not actually that obvious and stark in reality. So that concludes the inner frame. Put the head back together. Yeah, cool. Hopefully the eye thing still works. It was a little bit sticky before, but no, the eye still moves. It's a bit sticky, and I won't be moving it once it's built. This is all wired up. I've not got batteries for it yet. There's no guarantee it will actually work. It probably won't. I've made it. But that's all the inner frame done. Nothing left to do on the inner frame. I'm really happy with where it is right now. We've got that dust and dirt on there just to discolour it slightly, not to suggest dirt, but just to suggest grime. So I'm going to get the frame put together for a final shot at the end. I'll do a little spinny turntable thing, if I can get it to balance, with just the inner frame put together. So, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for the next one. As always, thank you to Ammo by Mig Jimenez for supplying all the materials for this build. Do go along to his website, which URL here. Check out their products. Their weathering products are brilliant. As I've always said in all these episodes, I'm having an absolute blast doing this. You do have to be very careful with the enamels on these Gunpla kits, obviously. If you're not making a Gunpla and you're making something else, go to town with them. If you're making a Gunpla, just proceed carefully. Try using some of the workarounds I've done, like thinning the paints with water, not thinners. using the enamel washes very carefully where there's no joints, things like that. You will get fantastic results. I'm having an absolute blast. So go along, go and see my stuff. Don't forget I'm on Facebook, facebook.com/modelmakingguru, and on Twitter. Twitter is obviously at modelmakingguru, and don't forget obviously the website modelmakingguru.com, which I now update, kind of. And last of all, thank you to my Patreon patrons who support me and allow me to do videos like this. If you're not a patron already, do go along to patreon.com/modelmakingguru. I'm just be really grateful if you'd have a think about maybe helping to support me. The more support I get, the more I can spend my life doing these kind of videos and tutorials for you. And I do love my patrons so much. There is Patreon exclusive content you can access when you're a patron. Should be getting back on with the Patreon exclusive Kshatriya fairly soon, so stay tuned for that. But yes, thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves. Go be cool, go make something cool, go play with paints, go experiment. And until we see you next time, adios amoebas. I'll do the spinny thing now.